Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming. My name is Joey Choi. I'm currently working with Learning Enterprise, part of ASU, as an online course manager for Computer Information Systems Stack. So I'm teaching in AWS and Computer Information Systems, and those two, that subject is divided into two parts. I have the Google IT as well as the Advanced Business Data Analytics Stack. So that's what I'm currently doing. And I know I've named this generative AI, Gen AI, then and now, but then can be really anywhere from when AI came out back in like in the 1950s, all the way when it was developing in the early 2000s, all the way to when ChatGPT came out and really started that AI boom, right? In 20 towards the end of 2022. And that's when the then I'll be focusing on is that 2022 part when ChatGPT first came out. And a little bit about myself, I completed my master's degree here at ASU in the WP Carey School in Business Analytics. During my master's program, I worked with the Cloud Innovation Center at SkySong, which is a part of Enterprise Technology. And I also did some research projects with EdPlus and worked with the Knowledge and Exchange for Resilience department as well. One thing I wanted to mention, kind of the whole interest I had for ChatGPT and how people are perceiving it, is because I did a research project with a bunch of professors and a few PhD students, and we scraped a bunch of Twitter posts that had the keyword ChatGPT from the moment when it came out from November 30th all the way to the end of February. And then we did some topic modeling, we did some sentiment analysis because we wanted to kind of see how people were perceiving it, how people are taking it in. Is it positive? Is it negative? What type of people are viewing it? So did a research project on that, and I'll be going a little bit about over that. I also have some industry experience where I worked as a business analyst and a data analyst in the biotech industry as well as the retail industry. And like I mentioned, currently I'm with ASU as a online course manager. So briefly going over what I'll be going over today. So I just want to briefly kind of touch how there's so many different types of data professionals now. Excuse me, all the way from data scientist, data analyst, business analyst. So what are the differences, data engineers, and kind of what are the skill sets needed for these roles? And then I'm going to go into the generative AI kind of then and now, specifically ChatGPT. What has changed? What are some new things that are going on now? And then kind of talk about towards the end how we could really better prepare ourselves moving forward with this rapid change of this AI boom era. So to start off, how normally a data kind of flows through an organization, you start off with the collecting and store data, usually done in typically done in like a SQL database, sometimes in the cloud, like an AWS S3 bucket, or sometimes in a CSV file. Once you have that collected and stored data, you clean and transform it so that it could be easily accessible, it can be easily transformed and load that you can do your analysis in. So once you have that data, you take that data and do some exploratory data analysis, see what type of insights you can pull out from the data that you have. Once you do that, you move on to the experimentation phase where you can run some predictive modeling, do some A/B testing and various analysis on the data that you have. Or you can take that into building a report that generates the insights, that shows the insights to the business so that the stakeholders can make a decision. So how do these different data roles kind of come into play when you're taking a look at that data flow that I was just showing you? So the data engineer usually takes part in a traditional sense in this first part right here where they're collecting the data or they're storing the data, and they're working with constructing data pipelines, building a scalable infrastructure, performing ETL operations, and the general skill set. Since they're working with big data, they need to be familiar with Hadoop, MapReduce and Hive, skills like that. Of course, you need to have a strong database knowledge skills like SQL, NoSQL, and also you have to have a strong programming base as well. And then we have data scientists who, in a traditional sense, works kind of closely in this area with the experimentation and the predictive analytics phase of the whole flow. However, I will say in normally every company is going to have their own kind of definition of what a data scientist is normally, and even with data analysts and business analysts as well. And they vary in role. And normally I notice with the smaller the company, the wider the range of the tasks you're going to be doing in terms of this data flow. And the bigger the company, you're more kind of segmented into a specific phase and specific role. So normally a data scientist works in this experimentation and predictive analytics phase. And the skill sets kind of required heavily rely on strong programming base like Python, like I mentioned, predictive analytics needs to have a strong math and statistics base, as well as knowledge on machine learning models, as well as deep learning models, and A/B testing as well. Like I mentioned, I have friends in multiple of these data domains, data professions that is a data scientist, but they're closely doing work as a business analyst, and kind of vice versa. I have friends who are business analysts who are doing like machine learning stuff. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there to let you guys know that it is companies are using it interchangeably, depending on the resource that they need and the work that they're currently doing. So moving on to data analyst, which more focus heavily on the business domain knowledge, where requires more critical and analytical thinking. So, and with the data analyst, you're working more of this clean transformation, the second and third step of this flow. So clean and transform data and explore and analyze data. And a lot of times communicating that to the stakeholders and the business decision makers. And the skill set needed, like I mentioned, relies heavily on being able to know how to solve a business problem. So you take a business problem, and then you take a look at the data, and then you need to know where to look. You need to know how to get the data and do the analysis so that you can solve that problem. Of course, we have Excel, Python, and SQL skills that come in handy, and then also a big emphasis on communication skills, because at the end of the day, you need to be able to communicate your findings to those stakeholders, right? And then lastly, we have business analyst, which is a little closer, very similar skill set to a data analyst, but a little closer to the business side and the stakeholder side, where you're identifying and defining business needs. You're finding those business requirements, documenting them. You're evaluating the current process and working on process improvement, as well as developing solutions to business problems as well, similar to a data analyst. And also similar skill set comes into play because you need those technical skills, you need those communication skills in order to deliver your content as well as find those insights. So we see a kind of common overall skill set between these data roles. And of course, there's a lot of other data professions, including business intelligence analysts. We have data insight analysts. We have data architects that kind of fit into sort of in the middle of these kind of four, I would say, roles. But a common topic that is underlying within all these roles is, of course, the communication skills and the technical skills that I mentioned. But I think a very important part is that problem-solving skills, which I believe is going to be one of the main skills that people are looking for, especially when we're coming out with this age with generative AI. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that generative AI is kind of barging into a lot of these roles right now, because I've seen a lot of job descriptions that are starting to have use in work in Vertex AI, you work in Copilot Studio and things like that. So generative AI, the skill set is definitely slowly barging into these roles as well. This is another diagram because yesterday someone was talking about how do you define a data scientist? It's very hard to define a data scientist. But in based on my experiences, I think a data scientist is kind of in the middle set of these three different domain knowledge, the computer science, the statistics, as well as the business knowledge. So this was another diagram I kind of found that really shows kind of an easier view of how these roles are kind of separated and where the focuses are. And of course, generative AI is starting to have a big part of it. And we see that in this research that Indeed did with the keyword generative AI and the recent jobs. As you can see, there pretty much Gen AI jobs were non-existent in the between 2022 and 2023. However, there's a huge you can see a rapid growth in this generative AI roles. And actually, I pulled a couple here. And if you see in these roles, like AI engineer, we have Gen AI lead here from these companies, the skill sets that they're looking for is actually very similar. And it's a little combination of all these roles that I've gone here. So not only are we looking for those technical skills, those communication skills. But now on top of that, where companies are looking for those experience with prompt engineering, experience with being able to iterate, utilize those AI tools, iterate it multiple times to get the result you want. So let's take a look at ChatGPT, which pretty much started this whole generative AI boom back in 2022, end of 2022. So as most of you guys might have heard already, ChatGPT is one of the fastest online platform that reached 1 million users, which took them only 5 days. And it took them, I believe it's around 2 months for them to reach 100 million users. And these are some of the areas like customer service, education, content creation, business use, healthcare, and entertainment that ChatGPT has been used over the past 2 years. So kind of going back to, this is just a graph of what the total monthly users of ChatGPT look like in about a year given time. And you can see that there's definitely a rapid growth. And you notice that there's sort of a dip in May, June, July, which is kind of the summer months, and a lot of people were saying that's when a lot of students are on their summer break, so they're not utilizing the tool as much for their papers and their assignments and things like that. So this time frame is when I conducted that research that I was talking about, where we scraped a bunch of Twitter tweets on the keyword ChatGPT. And we ran some topic modeling, sentiment analysis, and we noticed that, of course, people were talking about the search engine, Google, Microsoft, because that was around the time where people were wondering if ChatGPT can replace those search engines. Will we be using, will Google be obsolete in the future? And then also Google and Microsoft, they also were working on their own tools. Google, they're working on releasing Gemini and Microsoft Copilot. So those were the main things that people were talking about. But what we found interesting at the time was there was definitely a positive sentiment when it first came out. People were saying, wow, this is so cool. Even when I first found out about ChatGPT and started experimenting it was like one of the coolest things that I experimented with. And definitely there was a positive sentiment when it first came out. But then as time went on, the positive sentiment decreased slightly. Whereas you can see at the bottom graph here, the negative sentiment started to increase. And part of the reason was there was a lot of articles that came out around that time, and people were being concerned about ChatGPT's coming for your job. ChatGPT's kind of taking over. There's not, it's going to replace your jobs. And then I'm not sure if you guys remember, but back in the March of last year, Elon Musk and a bunch of tech leaders signed a open letter calling for a 6-month ban on developing AI. Of course, that didn't really go anywhere because a lot more competition for ChatGPT came out. Constant development for generative AI was happening. So we know that it didn't go anywhere, but there was definitely a fear factor at the time where it caused people to be worried more and more about ChatGPT. But where are we now? ChatGPT definitely made a lot of amendments and a lot of improvements to its tool. And the things I want to focus on, of course, now they came out with a new model, GPT-4, GPT-4o, and so on. And the user base increased and their capability increased, their accuracy got better. However, the things I wanted to focus on is that regulation and ethics part. Is that part being resolved right now? Of course, there's a lot of issues with privacy when it came out, and still there's a lot of companies that are not using ChatGPT. They're banned them from their company laptops because of privacy reasons, and however, ChatGPT is working on that right now, and ongoing improvements in safety and ethical guidelines. And another thing I wanted to point out, which I personally found interesting, was when it first came out, the knowledge cutoff dates or the data that the model trains on was cut off on September 2021, whereas now it's updated to October 2023. So it's a bit more recent, but it's not real time. So that's something to consider when using the tool. Obviously, with Gemini and Copilot in Microsoft, it's a lot more um, real database. So definitely wanted to mention that. Something I did want to point out in this kind of generative AI development timeframe here is that bottom is where kind of ChatGPT released this major stuff, but at the same time, a lot of its competitors like Meta, Microsoft, Google were really releasing their new tools, and a lot of people, and they were emphasizing the strength and of them and the weaknesses of ChatGPT so that these companies would come to them and utilize their resources as their enterprise tool. And now there's so many generative AI tools, it's really kind of hard to keep track. And everything's more and more tools are getting developed. Some of these tools you guys might be very familiar with. Scribe is an AI writing assistant, often utilized by journalists right now, students and professionals in research. GitHub Copilot, I know a lot of people around me are using this tool right now, integrated into their VS Code environment. And basically you just type in, write this type of code for me, and then it generates that script. And then you have Synthesia, which is a platform that converts text to video. And there's this article, I think it's a great read, and it's from Synthesia, and it shows the 168 best AI tools of 2024. There's so many tools right now, and so that it's categorized into like the best paid AI tools, the best free AI tools, and the AI tools that generates videos, images, writing, music, face, avatar, and so on. The list goes on. So that kind of brings up the question. Things are moving so fast right now. Things are changing and being developed, especially in the field of Gen AI. How do we that in if you're not kind of keeping up to date, it's so easy to get behind. So there's this kind of little handbook that's called How to Survive and Thrive in the Age of AI. And I brought a couple points from that I think would be very applicable kind of moving forward for us in this Gen AI kind of perspective. So obviously the first part, kind of embracing lifelong learning. And I think anyone in tech, this is kind of a mindset that everyone has. Everything is changing so fast. So you do have to embrace this lifelong learning perspective. So staying updated to what's going on in the recent trends. I personally am subscribed to this newsletter that's kind of sent out weekly that gives me like an update on what's going on with the AI field right now, which is a great way to kind of stay updated. And then also kind of developing AI literacy. And Also focusing on human-centric skills. So the skill set that I mentioned that kind of overall um, is being used in all data professionals, problem solving skills, communication skills, being able to critically think and creatively, and also a focus on emotional intelligence. And also leveraging AI as an augmentation tool to enhance productivity, data-driven decisions. I believe a lot of people I've talked to at this data conference, they're already doing this. They're using it to enhance their productivity, their tasks, day-to-day tasks. And I think the last part is the most important part, and cultivating a growth mindset. So being open to change and not being afraid to experiment with the AI tools and applications, because either there's people who is not doing anything while the change is happening, and there's people who are scared that the AI tools is gonna take their jobs. But somewhere in that middle, we need to be able to utilize this tool and use it to our benefit, make us more productive, so we can really kind of stay on top and be able to really thrive in this rapidly growing kind of phase of generative AI. So I think that's about time I have. So yep, that's it for my generative AI presentation. And I'll now pass it off to Mike, who will be talking about data models. And yeah, so thank you so much for listening.